Okay, notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, February 8th, I didn't put the new agenda, so I have the old dates. Is that okay? Okay. 2024 caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. And as for those of you who don't know, the meeting was supposed to be last Tuesday, but was rescheduled due to the snow day to tonight. Carmelina, can we have a roll call?
Sahar Aziz. Rob Bonacho.
Here.
Ken Diamond.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Charles Jelinas.
Here.
Layla Morelli. Sonal Patel.
Here.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz.
Here.
And Mary Wickens.
Here. Okay. Casey, can you lead us in the flag salute? Okay, CJ, do you want to start us off with announcements?
I think I have two here. The American Scholastic Press Association has awarded Westfield High School's Optic magazine first place with special merit for its reporting during the 2022-2023 school year. This category recognizes the top-scoring high school and college student magazines nationally for the association's Scholastic Newspaper Awards. The student-run Optic also was recognized in the category of Most Outstanding High School Literary Art Magazine for 2023. Congratulations to all of the student journalists and advisor Sean McDonald. And then secondarily, the New Jersey State Police Cybercrimes Unit will hold a parent presentation entitled Protecting Our Youth on Monday, February 26, from 7 to 8 p.m. in the Westfield High School cafeteria. Thanks.
Thank you, Casey. Not Casey, CJ. Mary?
I have two also. Members of the district faculty often are asked to present at local, state, and occasionally national conferences. Earlier this month, Visual and Performing Arts Supervisor Shauna Longo helped to organize and was a panelist on Inclusive Practices, Arts Education for All Abilities, during a day of professional learning co-sponsored by Arts Ed New Jersey and the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. Additionally, at Texpo in January, Dr. Gonzalez, Chief Technology Officer Brian Alker, Network Manager Arvin Vidal, and Assistant Network Manager Joe Mariteo provided an overview of the district's visitor management system currently being piloted at McKinley. Next, Westfield High School boys cross country and track and field coach Chris Tefelsky has received national recognition by the U.S. Track and Field and Cross Country Coaches Association as a 2023 High School Cross Country State Coach of the Year. One boys coach and one girls coach from all 50 states and the District of Columbia were selected based on their team's performances throughout the 2023 cross country season. Well done, Coach Tefelsky, and thank you for your continued dedication to your runners.
Thank you, Mary. Ken?
Thank you. When the citizens of Bikini Bottom discover that a volcano will soon erupt and destroy their humble home, SpongeBob and his friends must come together to save the fate of their undersea world. With lives hanging in the balance and all hope lost, a most unexpected hero rises up. Want to know who? Then join us on March 7th at 4 p.m. and March 8th and 9th at 7 p.m. for SpongeBob the Musical at Roosevelt Intermediate School to see just how the power of optimism really can save the world. Tickets are available at rs.booktix.net. Additionally, save the dates for the Westfield High School production of Heathers, the Musical, on March 14th through 16th, and the Edison Intermediate School production of Frozen, Junior, on March 21st through March 23rd, with more information to come. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Kent. Brendan?
Yep. The town's crossing guard company, ACMS, has openings for crossing guards in Westfield. Visit the community flyers page under Family and Community on the district and school websites to learn more.
Thank you, Brendan. Kristen?
Westfield High School 11th grader Sophia Basildua was recently featured in the Emerging Artists exhibit in the James Howe Gallery at Kean University. This exhibit, sponsored by the Art Administrators of New Jersey, presents artwork produced by students who are studying art in high schools throughout the state. The show included works from 35 different high schools that were judged by Kean University's Fine Arts Department. Sophia received recognition at the university's awards reception.
Thank you, Kristen. Rob?
The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be on Tuesday, March 5th in Cafeteria B at Westfield High School, beginning at 7 p.m. The meeting will be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which viewers can access on the board tab on the district website. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, March 1st, also on the board tab.
Okay, thank you, Rob. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Grip for the 2023-24 demographic study.
Yes, all right, great. So tonight's presentation is going to give you a 20-minute roughly summary of the demographic study that was performed for your school district about a month or two ago. So what I'll do is I'll go through the slides that are behind you on the wall here, and if we hold our questions to the end, that would be great, because I have a feeling I'll probably answer a few of them as we go. So just a little bit about who we are. I'll just give a brief presentation. Our company has been doing this type of work since 1998, about 26 years. It's a real niche field. It's called school demography. There's probably only about 100 school demographers in the country, and there's only a couple in the state of New Jersey. So I always tell students, if you're looking for a career where you have a job in the future, you want to study something in mathematics, statistics, or demography, to do something like this. We've done probably about 200 plus in the districts in the state of New Jersey demographic work. We do all the enrollment projections for the New York City public schools, which, if you've been following the news, is kind of interesting because of all the migrants that have been going into the city. So we've been working with them since 2006. With respect to myself, my name is Richard Grip. I'm the executive director of the company. Founded the company back in 1998 after I got my doctorate in educational statistics and measurement from Rutgers University. Most of us wind up being something called a psychometrician, which is where we work for the College Board, dealing with reliability issues of testing and validity. I really wanted a practical approach. I was a school teacher at the time for about 10 years down in Bridgewater, Raritan, teaching physics and statistics, and my superintendent said, look, if you want to do something with your statistics degree, this is what you should focus on your dissertation, is this thing called school demography. I never heard of it. And so I developed a multiple regression technique to project enrollments, and 26 years later, here we are. So we also, I really love this field so much, I still publish in peer-reviewed journals, and I testify for an attorney and law firm over in Morristown for districts who more or less get divorces from each other, usually in sending, receiving agreements, because in the state of New Jersey, you just can't walk up from those types of arrangements without looking at the different impacts. For me, it's the racial impact. So if you take a look behind you, the purpose of tonight's study is really to project enrollments. But there's so much more to that. So if you're going to be talking about a demographic study for us tonight, we projected enrollments for a 5-year period from the 24-25 school year to 28-29. Well, what else did we look at? We looked at your community at a whole, who you are through census data, looked at things like demographic, racial characteristics, socioeconomic indicators, birth counts, fertility rates. Then we looked at your historical enrollments by grade configuration. We grouped Lincoln with the elementary schools to make it PK to 5, and we looked at for that. I always like to say middle schools, you say intermediate schools, I'll probably use it interchangeably tonight. But for your intermediate schools, it's 6 to 8, and high school, of course, 9 to 12. So we looked at the historical enrollments for the last 10 years for all those different grade configurations. We looked at your historical birth counts. Birth counts are the greatest predictor of first graders for you because you have a half-day K program and also kindergarten students as well. But we were able to get birth data from the state of New Jersey at a very, very small level called a census block. It's the smallest geographic level that exists in the census data. And then through a program called ArcGIS, which is what a lot of people do mapping with, we were able to aggregate births by attendance zone, which is very interesting because then you can see which zones have the most births over time. We then collected new housing start data from contacting your planning and zoning department and then used that to modify what we call the baseline projections. We compared the projections to building capacities from your long-range facility plan to see if you have surpluses of seating or inadequate seating. Finally, we also took your student address data from 2 particular time points, the 2018 year and the current year, to see where students live, to see if there's any changes over time. So you're going to see all these dots up on a map very soon. And the last thing that we did was we tried to estimate for you, if you were to open up a full-day K program, what would that impact be? How many students could you expect in the full-day K program? So those are this first slide just talks about everything that's in this 80-page or so report, which we're really giving you, excuse me, the short version tonight. So behind me is showing you the historical populations of the town of Westfield over time. So everything to the left of that vertical line up there for 2020 is just census data historically. You can see that value way on the far right. That's a third-party organization called the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. That's what they think Westfield's population will be in 2050, which would be north of 35,000 people. Right now, there's about 31,000 people in the town. You can see the greatest population growth occurred in the 1950s. So who are you as a community? And then we'll move on to more of the interesting stuff with the school district. So like many communities in the state, you're changing demographically, particularly racially. And by about 2050, the United States will probably no longer be a white majority country. I think it's going to, we'll probably have Hispanics will probably, maybe it surpass them at that point in time. So that's exactly what's happening here. You're seeing growth in the Hispanic and Asian populations and the declining white population. About 77% of the population here is white. The median age is fairly close to that in New Jersey, you can see. The foreign-born population is not much compared to the state average. Only about 12% are foreign-born compared to about 23% in the state. China and Korea are the 2 largest sources of foreign-born persons. This is an incredibly highly educated community. More than 3/4 of the population has a bachelor's degree or higher. You can see the state average is about 42% roughly. Very high income, median household income is about $185,000, which means that 50% of the population, 50% of the households have an income even greater than $185,000, and then 50% have lower than that. About 11,000 housing units. Most of them are, about 80% are single-family homes. So that tells me that's mostly a bedroom community. About 19% are renter-occupied, which is much less that of the state, about half that. And $810,000 is the median value of an owner-occupied unit. So keep the salary and the value of homes in mind as I talk about some things a little bit later on. Being of a high SCS, such as you are, kind of changes who can come into a community such as this. So this is just showing a map. My GIS analyst has plopped all the schools up there. The next slide is showing all the 6 elementary attendance areas. I came down South Avenue, so I can see that bisecting line there. So you have the 2 intermediate schools. That's the attendance zone. So you have 3 schools to the north, 3 schools to the south. So let's talk about your enrollments. We always collect enrollments on the same day every year, which is about October the 15th, because that's the date that you as a collective group send your enrollment data to the state through NJ Smart. And this current past October, your enrollment is about 5,842 and a half. The half is a shared time student. But if we look over a 10-year period, in 14-15, your enrollment was 6,253. So if you look at the endpoints, you've lost more than 400 students in the district in the last 10 years, which is pretty significant. So you're going to see a chart in a moment that's showing that decline. But the increase, you actually had increasing enrollment up through 16-17, and then enrollment started to decline before stabilizing the last 2 years. A lot of your decline was related to the pandemic. Just like how many of the other districts I work with, very large declines. You had a decline of 244 and a half students in 2020, an additional 115 students decline in 2021. We'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation tonight. And we use something called the cohort survival ratio method to project enrollments 5 years out, just 5 years, because if you want to project 10, then we have to start projecting kids who have not been born. And that is a tricky thing, particularly in a community as small as yours. We do that for New York City. So there's what I'm talking about. You can see it was going up a little bit for the first couple years, declining through the pandemic years, really those big declines, and now stabilizing. So now we're going to look at it from elementary, middle, and high over that same decade. The top line, the blue line, is the elementary. And these are really important to look at. Because if you think like I do, you take a look at that graph and you say, wow, you know, if things are happening such at the elementary level, it's going to carry forward into the intermediate and high school level down the road. So you can see up there that the elementary population declined through 2021 before they reversed trend. So you can see the elementary population has increased in the last 2 years. My opinion, students returning back to the district after COVID. So if you look at that 10-year period, you've lost about 230 elementary students, if you just look at the endpoints. For the middle school intermediate population, that's going to be, if my eyesight is okay, I think it's the red line at the bottom, and it actually increased through the 18-19 year before reversing trend. And finally, the high school had very stable enrollment, that's the one in green in the middle, before declining in the last 2 years. So how do we project enrollments? I just like to tell you what this is so you're not thinking it's just some hocus pocus behind the curtain kind of thing. The way we do this is we look at how many students you have from one grade level to next over a 10-year period. So I'll give you a really simple example up there. If you have 100 first graders in the 2022 year, they become 95 second graders in the 2023 year, you've lost 5 students in the net. So the ratio between grade 2 and 1 is 95 over 100, or 0.95. So we do these calculations for all the grade progressions, and there's 13 of them, by the way. Birth to K is the first, and it goes all the way up to 11 through 12. So if the values are above 1, that means you're gaining students due to inward migration. Now, we don't know exactly what's causing them. I'm going to tell you that I know what it is for your district. I mean, you're one of the highest rated school districts in the state. So people know your district. They want to move in here because of the quality of education. But it could be, for some reason, proximity to jobs, proximity to transportation in New York City. There's a myriad of reasons that can cause these inward or outward migration. We just can't tease out in any of the formulas. So when we look at the 13 grade progressions, 7 of them in your district were above 1, 6 were below 1 on the average, or for a 5-year average. So it's not really saying you have a clear pattern of either inward or outward migration, but when I looked a little bit closer, the values, 3 of the values that were below 1 were at the high school level. That happens sometimes in communities such as yours where people just want a private high school education. Don't take it personally, that's just what they want. They might have their kids here K-8 and then go to private high school. Most of the inward migration was at the elementary and intermediate school level, which is what I would expect. What else can I tell you? In 2020, of the survival ratios in that 1 year, 7 of them, of the 13, were the lowest value in the last decade due to the pandemic. So when we do our calculations, we take an average of ratios from the last 4, 5, 6 years. We excluded a lot of those ratios going forward because we don't want to under-calculate enrollments going forward, taking into the pandemic, assuming that pandemic is done. So I just want to let you know that we did isolate out those 2020 ratios. So you have a phenomenon called first grade replacement. Everybody, well, you have a first grade replacement because you have half-day K. But you have negative first grade replacement here happening 5 of the last 9 years, 2.5 students to 66 students per year. Positive, you can see, is the other 4 years. You can see the numbers up there. What is negative first grade replacement? It's really just a comparison between the number of 12th graders graduating and the number of, in your case, first graders we want to look at because of the half-day K that are entering the district. So in your case, you're not getting enough, in some of the instances, first graders to come in to balance out the seniors that are leaving. So let me give you a simple example. If you have a graduating class of 400 seniors, you need 400 first graders to balance them out the next year. Some years you might be getting 385, so there's a shortfall of 15 students. That's what that is. It's just a comparison between the endpoints. But the beautiful thing about your district is that the numbers aren't that big. Some of the districts I work with have very, very large replacements. So there's not really much to be concerned with this, but I just wanted to mention what it is. You did have a change from positive to negative first grade replacement due to the smaller sizes of the first grade classes in the last couple of years. Here's the picture that I was talking about. This is just showing first grade replacement over time. Most of them were positive until the last couple of years. Those negative ones in 2020, 2021, again, pandemic related, smaller first grade classes coming in. In fact, take a look at this. We just mapped out the first grade replacement with respect to your enrollment change, K to 12, from year over year. And you can see there is a pretty strong correlation. Whatever happens in first grade replacement is typically what happens as far as your overall enrollment change, except for, take a look at 2020 and 2021, the enrollment change was incredibly negative, as I mentioned, due to the pandemic, because you had a lot of outward migration that year. So, the negative first grade replacement was actually compounded by outward migration in those 2 particular years. BERTs are key, because that is going to help us forecast kindergarten students 5 years later. And we looked at it for a 12-year period. You actually had declining births through the 2014 year before stabilizing. Key point here is that you had a very, very large birth bump in 2021. Yeah, I don't think it's, some people are going to joke. I know it's pandemic, you got nothing else to do. But yeah, but you know, that could be. But most of the districts I work with, the declining birth, there was a lot of declining births in 2020 and 2021, so they weren't getting the message. But if you look at the endpoints, and you'll see the data in a moment, there were 313 births in 2021. If we go back to 2009, which is a period of time when you were having increasing enrollment, still 23 births fewer, or 29 fewer births than in 2009. So you can see what I'm referring to up there. Basically, it declined through 2014. When you have 243 births stabilized, you have this big bump up in 2021, but still not bigger than what you had 12 years ago. So as I mentioned, what we have to do for your particular district with the half-day K is we compare how many students come to your district 5 years later for kindergarten and compute what's called that survival ratio, which is just the number of kindergarten students divided by the number of births 5 years prior. But we also do it with respect to first graders. You can see that fourth column where it says birth to kindergarten survival ratio, most of them are below 1, which means that a lot of parents here, of the 342 births, say in 2009, a lot of those kids aren't showing up your doorstep for half-day K. They're going to some private day program somewhere else, but good news, they show up for first grade the next year, because if you take a look, you get 406 in the top row, 460 first grade students after you had 342 births 6 years prior. High-performing districts will have very, very high birth to kindergarten, or in your case, birth to first grade ratios, because you're just seeing a lot of inward migration of parents who had their children born somewhere else, but they buy a house where their kids are just below school age so they can get them to come in here and register. That's how it works for high-performing districts. I see it all the time. Scarsdale, New York, one of my clients, one of the richest places probably in the US, has a birth to K ratio over 3. I've never seen anything like it, but yours is still pretty high. We broke out the BERTs by attendance area just to give you over time who's the biggest, where the biggest birth areas are. You can see the Jefferson area in blue down at the bottom, and we're aggregating all the BERTs, had the most number of BERTs, while the Wilson area had the fewest. The unknown column means that the state says to us, well, we know that the mother resided in Westfield. We just don't know exactly her address, so we can't tell you exactly which census block she's from. So for the purpose of our analysis, we just disaggregate them to the other 6 attendance areas by a proportion based upon the total BERTs. So here's showing your BERTs by census block over time. The darkest blue is where the greatest number of BERTs have occurred. And I'm going to use the same scale for 2021 so we can compare. And you can see there, it's pretty much just different. It shifts around a little bit where the greatest number of BERTs are. Again, dark blue is being the most. And we look in the aggregate, again, dark blue is where the greatest number of BERTs have occurred over time. And then this is showing us what your age pyramid looks like. An age pyramid is just a plot of the percentage of males back to back with females in 5-year intervals of ages. So you start from 0 to 4 for age all the way up to 85 plus. This is showing the age pyramid for 2010. In 2010, the largest groups for males was aged 5 to 9, and for females was 45 to 49. Now, I'm going to show you the data for 2020. But before I do, remember I said at the outset that you're kind of a high SES community? In high SES communities, you see something just like what you're seeing there, where you don't have enough people in the 20s and 30s because they can't afford to live here for the high home prices and high property taxes. If I go to Linden, which is one of my clients, not too far away, you would not see that because it's more of a heterogeneous type community, and that inside pockets, that's sort of like somebody bit onto an apple, that would all be filled in. So in 2020, again, if people age in place, you would just see a shift upward in the population. That's kind of what you're seeing here. The biggest group for males was 10 to 14, and for females was 50 to 54. And then we look at the change over time between males and females, blues being the biggest gainers and reds being the biggest decliners. The biggest gainers was 20 to 24. And you know, I have another client in Somerset County, we'll go nameless, but they have the same thing. And you know, I know that people really can't afford to come in here too much in 20 to 24s. I mean, there's some apartments that are coming online, things, but I have a feeling it's a lot of boomerang kids coming back into their parents' basements. I've got a couple that I finally got rid of 1 or 2. So, you know, that kind of thing, that does happen. You're laughing, but it's true. So the biggest decliners were people in their 40s. But if we look at this between that 10-year period, if we aggregate the males and the females, you had gains in your population all the way through from 50 to 79. So that's an aging population. Those people aren't having kids. The same time frame, you had very big declines in the 0 to 4 age group and the 5 to 9 age group. So those are preschool age kids and elementary kids. And remember we talked about that you've had declining enrollment up until the last couple of years? There you go, right there. It's your age sex diagram. So we did contact the local planning and zoning department, and they were very nice to us. They gave us a list of all the new housing starts. I saw some of the cool Vermella units as I drove through here. It's really cool to look at something like that. Maybe you may feel differently. But there are 562 non-age restricted units that have been approved to be built. Some of them are under construction and will be occupied this year. When we looked at where would the most impact be, the largest impact actually is the Jefferson zone, which has 37% of the units. The second largest was Wilson at 29%, and the third largest was the Franklin zone at 16%. For the intermediate zones, Roosevelt had just slightly more than half of the housing units. And you can see up there the Parkside at Westfield and Westfield Crossing Phase 1 are the 2 largest projects that are being proposed. There's a mix of market rate and affordable units. I'm sure you're aware that Westfield in 2017, the town signed a settlement agreement with the Fair Share Housing Center. and that's more or less to address your town's affordable housing obligation. So all these new projects that you see up here, well, in the report, I couldn't put them all up here because it just wouldn't fit on the screen, does have to have an affordable component. It's usually about 15% of the total number of units in development have to be affordable. So those 2 units are under construction, like I said, with expected completion this year. And this is just showing you where they are. It's maybe hard to see where you are if you're especially out there, but it's really centered on South Ave and North Ave, right down the center of the town, except for that one way up top, which if I remember correctly, I think that's the one I just mentioned. Let's see, that was Park, yeah, that's correct. But all the rest are pretty much right in the central core, which is kind of the way towns are going right now for growth. It's more like a smart growth, walking distance to stores and train stations and things like that. This is just showing your historical construction residentially over time. The only reason I show that is because even though there's been like 400 units residentially that have been built in the last 5 years, 6 years across each of these attendance zones, almost half of them, 183 units, were knockdowns. So people just raising the older home, putting up newer homes. In the McKinley area, 98 units, of the 98 units in the McKinley zone, 31 was the Parker in 2020, and another 30 was the Bentley in 2021. So we are looking at what was done here historically. And that's just showing you a location. All those dots on the screen up there are just showing where a house or an apartment building was in the last 5 to 6 years. So home sales, kind of interesting. You know, if you look at this from 2001 to 2023, home sales peaked around 2004, 2005, then declined due to the banking crisis and mortgage crisis of 2008, then went straight back up again through the pandemic. And you can see what's happened in the last 2 years, particularly this past year in 2023, not that many sales due to the higher mortgage interest rates. So it's kind of interesting how that all plays out. And the reason I show you that is because what we see is that the more sales you get, the more students that are going to be coming in. Usually the buyers are going to be families with children. So we start to see more inward migration in those hot sale years. But this is just showing sales by block over time. We took all the sales and we mapped them. And you can see where they are, dark blue being the greatest number of sales. So tonight's biggest thing you want to probably talk about is your enrollment projections. So again, we projected by school over a 5-year period. We did 2 sets of projections. One is called a baseline projection, which is basically saying what are the numbers going to be in the next 5 years, assuming none of the housing gets built, something happens, construction delays, or just whatever the reason, just to kind of strip it all out, this is what you'd have. And then the second projection would be, what if their worst case scenario, everything is built in the next 5 years, what does that look like? So we did 2 projections. The baseline projection is a total of 5,948 students in 28-29 school year, which would be a gain of about 106 students. If we adjust for housing growth, it would be a gain of almost 276 students. So if full-day kindergarten is implemented, it would likely increase your current enrollments about 250 to 275 students in addition to what you currently have in kindergarten. This is just showing the enrollments by elementary, middle, and high. Big takeaway here is this. I just told you you're expected to have enrollment gains for the next 5 years for the baseline, the adjusted projections. You're seeing them both baseline and elementary, baseline adjusted here, but not every grade configuration is expected to increase. You can see that the high school is actually projected to decline because those smaller elementary cohorts that I was showing you earlier tonight have to move through the system. And so eventually they'll get to the high school, and that's why there's a decline there. However, we are projecting enrollment gain at the elementary level and not too much of a change at the intermediate school level because it's sort of a mix of growing elementary coming in and some of the smaller elementary cohorts still moving up. So this is showing a capacity analysis. The capacity analysis is a relationship between a building's capacity, and it's not the way you may think of a capacity. It's not a fire code capacity where you cannot have more than, say, 400 students in a building. It's based upon how you're using the building currently. So in your long-range facility plan, your architect did an analysis of each building in the district and said, well, you know, your board policy has, I'm just going to make up a number, say 21 students per general ed classroom. You have 20 general ed classrooms in a building, 21 times 20 is 420, and that's your capacity. If you have more special ed classrooms or ELL, English Language Learner, or gifted and talented, you take those bigger rooms, gen ed, and you convert them to those small group instruction spaces, you decrease capacity. So it can change from year to year based upon how you're using the building. So I'm showing you that up there, capacities with respect to your current enrollment and then 5 years later. So anything in blue means that you have surplus seating in a building. So you can see at the elementary level, most of the 4 of the 7, if you can count Lincoln, have surpluses in the current time. The only one that really has a shortage above the elementary level is Edison. Moving forward, you can see that more things turn to red at the elementary level in the next 5 years due to that increasing enrollment that I was talking about. So the last thing we did for you is we created some maps. This is real quick. Again, we did 2 different years, and we took the student addresses from both of those years and poured it into a mapping program, which you'll see now. We did student counts by census block, student density by census block, and student yield by census block. So here's all the points up there of all your students in 23, 24. When we aggregate them at the census block level, the darkest colors up there in magenta are where the greatest number of students by census block live. So we did that for 18-19 year. We're going to show you the 23-24 year with the same scale so you can compare it. And you can see it really hasn't changed that much. They're really pretty much the same. The locations of the dark magenta may have changed, but the amount of magentas and reds are pretty much the same. But because the census blocks are different sizes, we have to kind of standardize them by dividing by the area of the block. And that's called student density, which is just the number of students per square mile. So the darkest colors up there are where the greatest number of students per square mile live. And we advanced this to 23, 24, and you can see it's actually getting less in dark colors. So the number of students per square mile has declined. And again, a lot of that has to do with your declining enrollment. And the last thing we did is we looked at yields by census block, which is the number of children per housing unit. So the greatest number of children per housing unit are in the dark purples. You can see it for 18-19. Here it is for 23-24. And again, less purples, less dark purples. So the number of children per housing unit is declining. Why? Population age structure in this community is getting older, just not having as many children in a lot of these units. So COVID, how did it affect schools around the country? Well, you're an example of declining enrollment in 2020 and 2021. Big districts had big declines. New York that I work with, I think they declined 37 or 38,000 people, children. Question was, where do they all go? Some people that we knew, I now live in Vermont. I grew up in Secaucus, don't live here anymore. And a lot of people from the New York, New Jersey metro area moved up to where I live in Vermont, and the snow kind of told them, you know, I don't want to live here all the time, and they might have moved back. But the question with remote work is now people really can sort of live anywhere, and the question is, again, will they continue to have remote work, or is it going to be a hybrid nature where you have to be close to an office? And that's really something that is really going to play out in the future. And I really don't know. I think where hybrid work is here to stay, but I don't think people are going to have to go back in the office like we've had to do our whole lives. I've got a 25-year-old who will not go 5 days a week. She thinks that's just absurd to go to an office, have to stay at home a couple days. It's just unbelievable. But this is showing the population change in the U.S. during the pandemic, just over that first year. The dark greens are the biggest gainers. The reds are the biggest decliners. So the Rocky Mountain states gained the most. The center of the country, lost a lot, the Rust Belt. But take a look in New Jersey. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to blow it up for you. The greatest declines are in gray and dark blue. The biggest gainers in yellow. So what I call the Turnpike Corridor, straight up what I call the gut, which is Hudson County, where I grew up, down through Mercer, Middlesex. That whole area was the biggest decliners. Biggest gainer, Ocean County. Where'd they all go? You tell me. This is an easy one. Long Beach Island, summer homes. Yeah, a lot of them went down there and they wound up staying there more permanently in those locations. Again, we'd like to update this data to see if people return. Cumberland County out there in the real southern part, I'm not really sure what happened there. So just as a summary tonight, after a period of decline, enrollments did stabilize here in the school district. Looking ahead, we are projecting enrollment in gains for the next 5 years, but not expected to occur uniformly across the 3 grade configurations where we're expecting gains at the elementary level. Declines are projected at the high school as those existing smaller upper elementary and intermediate school cohorts move through. And finally, like I said, the elementary cohorts are projected to gain due to the 2 things. As I mentioned before, all the inward migration here is happening at the elementary intermediate school level, strong inward migration, so you're getting it there, plus you had a big increase in the birth rate in 2021. So that's the main reasons why we're projecting gains at the elementary level. I know this was long, I hope it wasn't too boring, but I appreciate your time and I'll more than welcome to entertain some questions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Grip. It was not boring. It was very informative and interesting. I'm sure some board members have questions, so if you could let me know, then we can make sure we get to everyone's questions that you could answer. Go ahead, Rob.
Thanks very much. This is very thorough. So I have a couple of questions that kind of came up. So first thing we were talking about is gains in the elementary schools. And I know there was some data that showed how they would come about. I assume that data does not reflect what might happen if we went from a half-day to full-day kindergarten. Is that correct?
That's a great question. I meant to say that. So all the values that you're seeing on the slides for the projections, the capacity, grades by configuration is in your status quo scenario with a half-day K. So if you really just want to change things for full-day K, I would just add 250 students to 275 students to your the K counts that are shown in the report. That would be a good barometer going forward. So yes.
I had one other, if you don't.
Yeah.
Just one other question. So on the capacity slide, that I think it was 34 or whatever it was, you were talking about gauging the capacity of the buildings based on our policies, right? How many kids we would put in a particular classroom. How did that did it? And if so, how did it take into account the actual space we have in the buildings, right? Because we may have what I want to suss out is if we have a policy that says we can fit 20 kids in a classroom, but we don't have enough, either the classrooms aren't big enough to get 20 seats in them, or we don't have enough classrooms to put those 20 kids in. You know, a policy saying we have this many is great, but if we have no place to put them, that to me informs a lot of what we'll be doing going forward. Like, where do we want to put additions? What buildings might we need to make bigger or replace?
True. Yeah, I wish I could give you a good answer with that, since I'm not the architect that came up with that calculation, because I gave you the real simple explanation how that calculation, it's a little more complex than that. So they do have to take into account, in some cases, the square footage of a room, what it's being used for. Is like, this is probably not a capacity generating space because the cafeteria is just being used. So there's a lot of different, for eating, so there's a lot of different factors they have to take into account. But the architect would certainly be able to give you a more detailed breakout of the capacity for each particular school building by room. So you can actually see how those numbers up there are derived, and that might be helpful to you. It's very easy to print out. It's from your LRFP.
Yep. Just building off Rob's first question about kindergarten, do you see any kind of downhill enrollment changes if we were to implement full-day kindergarten? Do you think that would increase our later grade enrollments by families choosing to move in? And if so, how, obviously that's impossible to predict, but it's what you've been doing.
It's a tricky thing. I mean, personally, look, the reputation of a school district is, in my opinion, the #1 reason people move in. The fact that you have full-day K may pull in some more. It's possible. But, when I did the calculations, I was basically taking your first grade population that we project in the report, taking about 95% of them, backing them up 1 year to give you what the K would be full day. That's more of a good barometer, just as an estimate. But until you do it and you get a couple years under your belt, we really don't know. It's really hard for me to gauge what that real impact, true impact will be.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
A very good report. I like this kind of stuff. I just have a couple questions. With the new housing units coming in and going back to the birth slide, did you account for the new people coming in and having births as well, or was the births kind of static quo in your analysis?
So the births that we have are all historical births. So, and we only have data through 2021. If you're saying to me, did we project how many births from those new people that are moving into? Yeah, that would be really almost incredibly difficult to project. In fact, for something like your district, we only need 2 extra years. We need a 22 birth year and 23 birth year to project kindergartens in 27 and 28. So I had to do more or less just a simple rolling average of historical births. We couldn't do anything really complex. I was bugging the state. They thought they were going to get me 22 birth data for this report, and they couldn't do it, so they still didn't come out with it. But yeah, no, nothing that complex.
All right, thanks. And then, did you assume that the out-of-district population kind of stayed constant through the analysis?
That's another good question. So anything like that with people going private or parochial, we assume that what has happened historically will also happen into the future. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people say to me, well, are you taking into account maybe a bounce up in the home resale market when mortgage interest rates go down? So this is what's called a projection. It's not a forecast. A lot of people think it's the same thing. A projection looks at historical trends and more or less extrapolates them out into the future. A forecast starts predicting things that haven't happened, such as a decline in interest rates, or people moving in from Panama or Colombia like you're seeing in New York City, or a pandemic. We can factor in that. But that's not what we're doing here. So it's strictly historical data moving forward.
Well, follow up to that thing, just curious, with all the new housing units coming on with the apartments and the content, do you think would that impact the high school greater than it does today? Because, they may not be able to afford to send them out of district.
Well, that's a good question. So let me talk about that for one quick second. So I didn't tell you how I calculated how many children are projected out of each one of these developments. In the state of New Jersey, Rutgers University has come out about 5-6 years ago, what's called the multipliers, or from the Center for Urban Policy Research. It's more or less a phone book manual. It says, based upon all the data they studied, here's how many children you can expect out of a apartment, 1 bedroom, 2, 3 bedrooms, townhouse, market rate, affordable, detached single family home, so on and so forth. We use those average values to compute what the impact would be on your district. The thing I can tell you it works in your favor is this. You have a prevalence of 1 and 2 bedroom units, which do not have many children coming into those type of units. However, I'm going to say that in high performing districts, it could be higher, because again, people might do anything they can to get their kid here. So I can't tell you with great certainty, but I'm just going with statewide averages of what to expect out of a 1 bedroom and a 2 bedroom. And for instance, the greatest impact in any school would always be at the elementary level. When you look and carve out the percentage of kids that come out of a new housing unit, I think it's usually about 58 to 60% is at the elementary level, then the remaining 40 is at the intermediate or middle school level and the high school.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Anybody else? Great. Thank you so much for your report. Did you want to?
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay. You ready? Okay. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez for a budget development presentation, part 2.
Yes, we're just getting the slides ready to go. As mentioned, this is the second presentation that we will be providing up to this point on the status of our budget development for next school year. The first was done in January, where we gave a preliminary overview of where we were at that time, recognizing that there were a number of variables that we still had not received certainty from the State Department of Education or even our insurance broker to be able to factor that into our calculation. So what you saw in January and what you'll see tonight are still proposed increases and proposed adjustments based upon the data that we have thus far. But what we have done is taken our conversation from last board meeting and factored into that conversation some enhancements to the budget based upon the feedback of everyone around this table, as well as the feedback that we've received from our community. And we built that into a presentation this evening that, again, just gives an overview of where we are today. By the end of next week, the governor will be releasing the state aid figures for school districts so that we will have that final piece of our revenue puzzle in order to calculate the necessary figures to finalize our budget, so that at the March 5th board meeting, the presentation will have much greater detail as it will represent the finalized figures. So there we go. Thank you. So what we are going to do this evening is really just do a quick overview, given that we spent so much time with the demographic study, to show where we are today, how we got to where we are, what priorities sort of set the guidelines for the decision making. We'll jump right into what the potential increase is based upon those assumptions, and then provide some high-level overviews of what we're looking to add and how that aligns with our strategic plan. I do want to give an overview, again, at this point, because we just completed our Thought Exchange community engagement experience last week. I do want to give an overview of what those results showed, but certainly plan to provide additional detail in the coming weeks as we delve into the data a little more deeply. And then, of course, end the presentation with additional details regarding the budget vote and how to get more information as we finalize the budget and conduct our information sessions for members of the community. So as I mentioned, in the development of the 24-25 budget, we once again are guided by priorities that I'm hoping are familiar for everyone around this dais and in the community. We continue to prioritize student outcomes. We want to make sure that the student experiences remain consistent and are not negatively impacted by any budgetary decision. And in doing so, we want to make sure that our class sizes and course enrollments also are areas of focus and priority for us as we make decisions regarding what we include in the budget and what may need to be adjusted as we move forward. We also, as I said, consistent with the first two, we want to make sure that all of our existing programs and offerings continue to be provided to our students so that their experience, even if the world and the environment around them may change, we want to make sure that their class experience, their extracurricular experience, their student support experience remains consistent to what they have received in the past. But starting last year, now that we have the opportunity to partner with the community and asking for their approval to build our budget back, we are looking to also use the 24-25 budget to continue our expansion of programs and offerings. If you recall, last year, we added to our budget for the current school year academic support teachers, counselors, as well as English as a second language teachers for our multilingual learners. And then as we work to maintain our buildings and we work to explore how we can ensure that our facilities and our grounds are equipped with the necessary maintenance in order to allow for our students and our faculty to be able to provide educational and extracurricular experiences, we also added a priority to improve and sustain our school buildings and grounds for the upcoming school year. As I said, I wanted to jump right into the impact. We will break this down a little bit and by the next board meeting go into greater detail. But I think it's important to just orient people to what you see on the screen. First and foremost, this is as of today. So once again, this does not take into account any updated state aid figures we will get from the governor's office next week. So what this presumes is that our state aid will remain flat next year. And as a result, if we get any increase, that will certainly prove favorable for us. Likewise, if there's any decrease, then there are going to be some decisions that we as a district will have to make. But with that in mind, you also will note that items in blue represent the maximum allowable tax levy increase that the Board of Education can approve from one year to the next. And as we indicated last month, that is a slight difference from the experience last year. Last year, the taxpayers were required to vote on the base budget, which was up to the tax levy increase, and anything above the tax levy increase, the mandated tax levy increase cap. Well, this year, the governor recently signed into legislation the ability for school boards to make the decision to approve a base budget, but once again, limiting their approval only to that which is permissible under the tax levy cap. That tax levy cap is set at 2%, with the exception of any adjustments that are made when there are increases to enrollment or increases to health care as related to the state health care program. So when you see a tax levy increase of 2.5%, that's because it takes into account the 2% tax levy increase plus the adjustment, the slight adjustment this year that we received due to a health care increase. So what that means is on March 26th, the Board of Education will have the ability to vote on and approve a base budget that will not exceed the current tax increase of 2.5% over last year. And I just want to continue to reiterate and underscore, propose simply because we don't know what the tax levy increase impact will be when we get the new state aid numbers, and that may adjust in one direction or another. Now, when you look over to the red portion of the graph, what you'll notice is that will represent a portion of our operating budget that will permit the school district to maintain educational continuity. Up to this point, we use the phrase status quo. We use the phrase status quo and in many ways suggestive that it's a copy and paste from the prior year. We're not doing anything different. We're just carrying over and keeping our fingers crossed, hoping everything stays the same. But that certainly is not the case. What the items in red represents are the staff necessary to maintain the continuity of educational experiences as it relates to existing programs and offerings and existing staff. So when you look back at our priorities, and one of our priorities is to maintain class size and enrollment, well, when you're looking at a 1.13% portion of that bar graph, that represents staff who unfortunately we are not able to fit into a 2.5% budget. So in order for us to maintain the current level of staffings across the district in our schools, we would need to also exceed our tax levy increase max of 2.5% by an additional 1.13%. So I'm hoping that makes sense to everyone. Great. So again, the educational continuity is indicative of a few things as well. It not only refers to the staffing that would be necessary to keep from one year to the next, but it also is indicative of the items that we're able to include in the base budget that build upon the success of this past year. So all the curriculum work that's being done, all the work that's being done to enhance our programs and offerings, the ability to design programs that will allow students to stay in districts instead of being educated out of district. All of those are represented as improvements and enhancements from the current year and are built into that blue base budget. And anything that couldn't fit is what's in the 1.13 in the red. Now, the items in the red and the green are those items that will be part of any budget vote that takes place on April 16th. So, of course, the 1.13 represents the additional the staffing that do not fit in the current base budget, and then the 0.88% represents enhancements to the 24-25 budgets. And what do I mean by enhancements? Enhancements refer to those items that are not required, they're not mandated, but are part of that continuity of expansion of our programming and offerings, as well as the maintenance of our buildings and grounds. So, looking at that green portion, that 0.88%, What we're looking to do is seek additional funding that will allow the district not only to maintain the programs across all schools, but also begin to implement enrichment programming across kindergarten through 5, begin program planning and redesign of gifted and enrichment courses at the intermediate level, and expand elective courses in grades 9 through 12. If you recall, last year, we focused our attention on providing the academic support to students who were in need. We wanted to make sure in our elementary and our intermediate level, any students who were experiencing challenges, continued challenges as a result of the experience over the pandemic, had the appropriate supports available to them, both in the general education classroom as well as in any smaller group in targeted settings. So when we continue to look at ways that we want to align our work both with the needs of our students as well as the strategic plan that we adopted in the spring, we also want to look at expanding offerings for all students. So looking at the 24-25 budget, we see this as an opportunity to increase enrichment programming for all students available in all of our schools. So in the additional proposal, that 0.88% that I referenced in the green, that would include additional funding that will allow us to do that. We also look in that additional green to continue to seek ways to support special programs and student support services, whether it be by designing programs and supports to allow students to be educated in our district versus outside of district, or being able to look at how we're currently supporting our staff to make sure that they are compensated and supported while they're working in our schools and will not seek employment elsewhere. And that's certainly something that we heard loud and clear, both by our community as well as from members of the administration and the board, that we need to make sure that we retain our high-quality teachers, administrators, and support staff. And then last but not least, the 24-25 additional proposal would also look at ways to augment and add staffing to our district buildings and grounds department as well as security in our school district. So when we look at the proposed budget enhancements that I just referenced, I want to bring everyone back to our strategic plan, because last year it often came up, whether it be during the presentations at a board meeting or even during the roadshow that we did last year. What's the plan? How are you making these decisions? Each year, what's guiding those decisions beyond the priorities? And that's really where the strategic plan came in. Our 5-goal strategic plan outlined a path forward that provided a focus for this school district on everything from student learning to wellness to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as community partnerships and fiscal planning and facilities planning. So when we look at how we proposed our budget enhancements for this coming school year, we see that the implementation and enhancement of enrichment programming and enhancement of our special ed programs and student support programs are all related to deepening the learning experiences for all of our students and broadening those academic opportunities and supports for all learners. So for all learners, we recognize that some learners may be in need of remedial supports, as we recognized last year, and we also recognize that all learners may be in need for enrichment opportunities. And that, of course, is not isolated to just the elementary, intermediate, or high school, so the proposal seeks to touch all of those grade levels. We also noted that the augmentation of our district's buildings and grounds and security staffing aligns with goal number 5, which is our finance and facilities goal, but also highlights the objectives that we want to support a safe, healthy, and district-wide strategy to support school safety and security. So when we're looking at health, we're looking at safety, and we're looking at security, making sure that our facilities are well maintained, making sure that our grounds are well maintained, and making sure that we have appropriate personnel and staff to ensure that our schools are secure, all directly align with our goals and objectives of our strategic plan. Moving on, I did mention that the thought exchange engagement that we introduced last week was an interactive experience that allowed individuals from this community to be able to, after providing the thoughts, each participant had the ability to then rate other thoughts. so that it allowed us to somewhat weight the importance of each of those thoughts and then use the system to start aggregating those into themes. So when you look at the most recent thought exchange, we had a number of participants that took place, totaling 1,500 participants, who expressed 967 thoughts. And what that simply means is, of the participants, not everyone offered a thought. Some just said, I want to rate other people's thoughts. And in some cases, a participant may have offered more than one thought. So that's not necessarily going to be a one-to-one ratio, but you do see that there were a substantial number of participants and thoughts. But really, where the power comes in are the number of ratings. The 52,000 ratings provide additional feedback beyond just the 967 qualitative thoughts, but it also provides additional quantitative data for us to look into. When you look at the individuals who participated, you can see the breakdown listed here, with about 62% of our individuals who participated were parents, 9% were students, so we did invite our high school students in grades 9 through 12 to participate. And we had about 135 who participated. We also invited our school staff. So all members of the school staff were invited. We had about 365 or 25%. And then individuals who we were able to reach out to, who had reached out to us in the past or subscribed to our synopsis or our newsletter, we were able to reach out to our community partners, our municipal partners, and afford them the same opportunity to provide their feedback. And you could see we had about 3% who participated, and then an additional 3% who participated who chose not to identify with one particular role in the district. Now, this is just a high-level overview of what the thoughts look like. And what you'll notice is that the words in this word cloud that are larger represents those words and thoughts that were rated the highest. And when you look at the smaller, they represent thoughts that were offered but that weren't as highly rated. And certainly, as you look just at the highest level at this visual representation, I think it was not designed to necessarily follow Dr. Grip's presentation, but I think it certainly speaks to the importance of looking at our enrollment, looking at our future enrollment projections, and seeing what we need to do to be able to properly prepare to receive and accommodate the students as they enter our buildings. And I think the community recognized that as well, with facilities, sizes, and updated buildings being at the top of mind for those who participated. You'll also notice things such as kindergarten. As you could imagine, full-day kindergarten was an additional area of interest, sometimes overlapping with facilities, but certainly being a separate priority in and of itself. And then you also note that paraprofessionals and staff were other areas of interest that were expressed in the thought exchange. So as I mentioned earlier, we will provide additional details and data as we continue to dive into the results, but I did want to provide an overview of what the data revealed up to this point. So moving into the next steps, as mentioned, the March 6th board meeting will be the next presentation where we will have the ability to present a finalized proposed budget that the board will have the ability to review and vote on in order for us to then complete the step necessary to submit the budget, the preliminary budget, to the county. The County Office of Education reviews our budget for compliance and doesn't necessarily determine whether or not they like our budget. They just make sure that it complies with the necessary standards. And in doing so, once we receive that approval, we then return on March 26th, and at that time, there are going to be two decisions that the board will have to make. They will have to cast a vote to finalize the base budget. So they will cast a vote that will determine that blue portion of the graph and make that decision, and that decision will be the approved base budget for next year. But then the board will also have to make the decision as to what the additional spending proposal will be to be placed on the April 16th ballot. And that represents the red and the green. The red, additional staffing for educational continuity, and then the green, which is includes those enhancements that I just referenced. So on April 16th, the budget will then be voted on by the community, but only the red and the green items, only the additional spending proposal will be voted on April 16th, along with the Board of Education election. And keeping in mind that on April 16th, if the budget additional spending proposal is passed, that will then be added to the base budget approved by the board at the March 26th meeting, and that will represent our operating budget for the next school year. That will then represent our new base budget for the next school year. If the voters do not approve, and this is important to note as well, because last year when the voters voted on the base budget and the additional spending proposal, or at that time, the second question, if the first question went down, it went to the town council, and the town council would have to make decisions about what to do about the budget. However, the second question, if that went down last year, then unfortunately, anything that was included in that second question would not be permitted to be implemented or funded any other way the coming school year. So that same thinking goes into this budget vote. So the additional spending proposal, think of it in the same way that you would think about that second question. The additional spending proposal, if it passes, is added to the budget. If it does not pass, then those additional enhancements that I mentioned in the green and those staff members who are necessary for that educational continuity, those would not be part of the budget, and we would not be permitted to reallocate funds or try and add them later on. It would not go to the town council. It would not be able to be introduced until the following school year when we would rebuild the budget for the 25-26 school year. So I just wanted to make sure that I reiterated that. So a lot of details, a lot of important information that we want to make sure continues to be available to all members of the community. So I do want to highlight that on our website, we do have a direct link to our budget portal, which can be found in on the front screen, as well as a community engagement schedule that allows individuals, once the board approves the budget and approves their spending, as well as the additional funding proposal, we will actively engage in an information campaign, both in person and virtual, to allow as many individuals to ask questions and find out more in the event that they were not able to tune into any of the board meetings. So, to review, next steps, February 29th, we expect the release of state aid. That will be factored into our budget so that on March 5th, we will present that budget, preliminary budget, to the board for their review and approval so that we could submit it to the county office of the DOE. And then on March 26th, the board will hold their public hearing and vote on the final base budget, as well as that additional spending proposal for the April ballot, which will then be voted on April 16th at the same time as the Board of Education election. Polls will open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. on that day. So that concludes part 2 of our presentation. If I will open it up for any questions that the board has at this time. Sure.
Okay. If anybody has any questions, just let me know so I can keep track. Mary, you want to start us off?
Thanks. I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this right. So the red and the green part, Dr. Gonzalez, does that mean if it's not approved, would we lose current staff?
So the red represents current staff, And the
Okay.
green represents if there's any additional staff introduced in the green, they would
Okay.
represent new.
The
But
red including like the counselors that we just got? And
We haven't identified,
it's
we haven't identified who would be
Okay.
included at this time, because, as I said, we don't want to predetermine who's in there until we know for sure what our state aid
Okay.
figures will be. Because if our state aid figures come in favorably and there's an increase, then we're going to have fewer existing staff in that red portion.
Okay,
So
now I
we
get it.
haven't made those.
I get the difference between the red and green now, thank you. Okay.
No
But it
problem.
will be, the positions will be notated on the ballot question,
For,
like we did last year.
oh, for the public?
The
Yes.
public, what the public votes
For
on.
new staff or for?
Both.
For both, okay. And then for the green, going by the colors, one of the enhancements was to special programs and support services. Do we know how? Or any ideas we're going to do?
We do. And again, without going into great detail, what this represents is our ability to, as I think I alluded to, look at creating in-house opportunities to educate members of
Okay,
our,
that's what I thought. Okay.
special education community who are currently serviced out of district.
Mm-hmm.
And the supports necessary to do that require both administrative supervision as well as support staff in order to make that happen.
Right.
So part of that enhancement is recognized in that green portion.
And that would be, I mean, maybe people don't know this, but that's favorable to us because out-of-district tuition is far more expensive.
Certainly from a fiscal standpoint,
Yes.
the cost to educate students outside of our district is great because of tuition costs that aren't limited to 2% increases, as well as transportation, as we all know, which is certainly hard to come by and by no means limited to 2% increases. But I think equally, if not more important, I'll take it a step further, more important is the fact that we would be seeking opportunities to keep our students in Westfield.
And in the community.
And in their community, learning
Yes.
with their peers, their neighbors, and their friends.
That's great, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other board members? Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over right now to Casey for the student representative report.
Entering the second half of the academic year, Westfield High School is full of excitement. This month's activity period will be run by No Place for Hate and is called A Seat at the Table Game Edition. Building off of the success of the after-school Seat at the Table event in November, this activity period will bring the WHS community together for everyone to share stories about their ancestry and identity. Using dice specially created by the WHS Makerspace classes, students will play a fun game with questions aimed towards getting students to talk about their family traditions and learn more about one another. Looking ahead, Student Government and the Community Service Club are planning for next month's activity period during Community Service Week. A large part of that activity period revolves around students packaging toiletry kits for St. Joseph's, a group that helps those in need. Over 1,000 kits will be assembled, each containing everyday necessities like toothpaste, deodorant, and baby wipes. To gather these supplies, an Amazon wish list is currently open. You can find the link on Instagram at WHSSGA1. Those donating should make sure that they select WHSSGA care of Jamie Glickman when checking out to ensure that supplies are delivered to the school. Also, as part of Community Service Day, WHS students will face off against the teachers in a basketball game as the entire school cheers them on. After multiple years of ties, both sides are eager to take home a win. Sign-ups for both students and staff are currently open. With the second semester underway, students continue to thrive in and out of the classroom, and we can't wait to see what the rest of the year has in store for WHS. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. We'll turn it over for our committee reports. First up is the SIP committee by Kristen, or Rob, sorry, Rob.
Sure, I get two in a row. We got lucky. So SIT met on January 29th, 2024, discussed a number of items related to the curriculum, some new textbooks that are on the agenda for today, progress on the strategic plan and budget goals, as well as responses to questions that fall within our role. We had two presentations, one from the Comp Sci department and one from the Technology Education department. And those, you'll notice very significant similarities between both what's going on with those departments and the needs and the future plans for those departments as we talk. So the Technology Education department is supervised by Mr. Tom Patterson. Computer Science is supervised by Ms. Elizabeth D'Alessandro. Tom Patterson also supervises science, and Ms. D'Alessandro also supervises math. And the reason that these departments that weren't necessarily under either of these areas were in the past were merged under there is because there is a significant amount of similarity both in staffing and in the type of work that's being done. So, for example, we found out that the computer science courses, especially as they get to higher levels in the high school, really work in tandem with many of the higher level math courses. So it was a perfect and logical fit to move these departments under those particular supervisors. And they provided us the same overviews that we've seen in the other curriculum presentations that the committee's had. Those presentations are available on the district's website. Just go to District Communication, Spotlight on Education, and Information Series, and you'll find those. So a few highlights. Both departments are focusing on growth at the high school level, fueled by increased consistency in existing curriculum, and expansion of offerings at the elementary and intermediate level, and a redesign of space to accommodate program growth and advances in technology. I want to focus on the additions to elementary and intermediate level because a lot of the courses that we're utilizing in these particular areas in the high school may start at, if you compare it to other districts, somewhat of a more basic level than you might see, right? And that's because we haven't had either the space or the allocation of curriculum to start some of these more basic level studies at the elementary level or at the intermediate level. So one of the larger expansions, and this goes right in with Dr. Gonzalez's presentation for what we're hoping for enhancements for the budget, would be to improve those offerings at the elementary and intermediate level such that we're doing a lot of that baseline work already before the students get to the high school, and they're now coming to the high school prepared to do some of that higher level work, whether that's in programming, whether that's coding, in all sorts of different languages. So for example, the Comp Sci curriculum at the elementary level is focusing on using basic play to teach algorithms, and there is a social component to it for digital security, accessibility, safe and positive online habits, which is perfectly appropriate at that level, right? Students are getting used to what you're doing online and having that accessibility that they hadn't had before. But then we get to the intermediate curriculum, right? That's got some level of work, but for Comp Sci, it's being completely rewritten. Grade 6, for example, is in a pilot course where students are creating a game from start to finish. So they're handling everything from graphic design to debugging code. Grade 7's new coursework is going to build on this, which will add an introduction to programming languages, again, things that we were only starting to see in the high school level. Spreadsheets, data management analysis, so all stuff that Kent and our presenter would love, and teaching things like online safety and the effect of social media on the person, right? So as you get more advanced in your use, you need to be taught this stuff and how it's going to operate. Grade 8 courses are going to teach now next levels of program languages. A lot of them will be more optional. If you have students in the 8th grade, they can choose certain electives. But that'll be, again, next levels of program languages, good versus bad data, AI, emerging technologies, and then professionalism and communication and copyrights. These courses, again, all being revised to support an expansion of offerings at the high school, where it used to be they were the students' first introduction to a lot of these languages. The high school is then having multiple courses redesigned, again, to build on this stronger intermediate and elementary curriculum. So there's a basic Comp Sci course that will start introductions, but at a higher level. Comp Sci 2 right now is an honors AP course. It's taught all in Java. And we're now going to be able to, and what we're looking at now is expansion of Comp Sci courses even beyond that. Most of the courses are instructor-developed programs, except for the honors and AP courses. Those use, obviously, College Board-approved materials and texts. So a quick note on AP for Comp Sci. We had 59 students take the AP exam. They had an average score of 4.4. This year, we're seeing fewer students taking the AP exam because we were only able to run 2 sections of the honors Comp Sci as opposed to last year's 3. And that goes to the second part of what we're talking about, which is the main needs and goals of the program. Yes, we want expansion of opportunities across grade levels, but that requires additional space and additional staffing because we can't continue to trade off faculty members in math to do Comp Sci when we have growing enrollments. So again, part of our program enhancements and part of what we're looking to do is level that out, right? We need to develop the curriculum for them to teach, but the next step now is bringing on the people to teach it. You can't bring on people if you don't have anything for them to teach. And also, you can't bring on people if you don't have any place to put them. So all more reason that the budget and the space increases are important. So next, for the technology education, it's going to be you're going to hear similar news, right? This follows a similar path with similar plans for increased staffing. Why is technology education important? In just at the high school, where most of these are elective courses, the students taking these courses have grown from 100 students in 2020 to 300 in 2024. That's a big jump in a short span of time. Again, a small program at the elementary level. These are the makerspace courses that you see your elementary school kids taking. Teacher-initiated additions, which have some levels of inconsistency, quite frankly, across the elementary levels. If you have one student with a friend in one school who says, my teacher's doing this, and another student or friend that says, well, my teacher's doing this in this course, we want to eliminate, starting one, that level of inconsistency. So if there's a great program going on at Franklin, that program also should be expanded to Jefferson. Intermediate curriculum in these areas is also being revamped. That's expansion of what are largely project-based courses in materials, tech, engineering design, and robotics design and engineering. And all of this will go to improve elective offerings at the high school. Again, I read the budget presentation before, but I wrote this up, so this is right in line with what we're talking about here. So coursework is being redesigned at the high school to be taught, very important, by multiple certified staff. One of the things that came out in the curriculum meeting is that there is a shortage of certified teachers in most technology education fields across the state. And how are we going to deal with that, right? One is to try to find new teachers, but it's hard to find new teachers in a pool that's shallow and doesn't exist, unless we want to start stealing them from other districts, but I'm not beneath that, or above that rather. What we're doing internally, however, to make sure that the other districts are not upset with me, is sending a lot of our teachers who have interest and experience in these areas for greater professional development, right? So the state has a certain level of certifications that are required for people to teach these courses. We can talk about whether that makes a lot of sense or not when there's a shortage of teachers, but be that as it may, those are the rules we have to play by. So what we are doing as part of professional development is sending teachers who might have taught these courses before, maybe had to give up another course, or maybe were not officially certified to teach it, but certainly had the expertise to do it, to get those certifications to expand our teaching pool. Again, expand the teaching pool, you're able to expand the offerings. So there's a lot of energy and excitement going on these programs. It made a ton of sense to move them to the supervisors they're working under because there's so much continuity and cross-pollination, especially between the teachers who are looking to do these courses and their level of expertise. But again, it all comes down a lot to space, which is the final part of what we discussed. So both departments have been working closely with our architectural teams to revamp and expand the current tech spaces we have. So an example of this summer we're renovating the Roosevelt School woodshop. We're going to divide it into a dedicated woodworking section, a digital computing area that'll have things like 3D printers, and a separate connection to the existing computer room, with the idea being to create a seamless teaching environment, right? You design something on the computer, you move down the assembly line, so to speak, to see it printed or built, and that's all able, because of the connectivity, to be supervised by a single teacher or two to ensure, obviously, continuity and assignment and safety. Also upgrades to equipment for that reason as well. We want to make sure that all of our equipment continues to exceed the quality and safety standards that are set on us, not meet them. So that was a lot. The other thing we discussed was chemistry textbooks, which are on for approval today. And just a quick summary of how this is done. The process for vetting texts is pretty extensive. It starts with a committee from within the department. So here it was a committee of science teachers at Westfield High School. They review several books from multiple publishers. They then get the opportunity to consult with outside colleagues and analysts regarding each text, especially colleagues who are using them in other schools. It's great to have them, but it's even better to see how they function and how well they have worked or have not in other districts where they can speak to folks. Then they select the recommended text largely for their thoroughness, but also for capacity to be used across multiple courses. This is a long and arduous process, but a very thorough one. So up for approval tonight, the chemistry textbooks. We also have an intern and student teaching candidate and 6 field trips. These are 4 grade level trips to the Evelyn Dunn Gallery, Westfield Memorial Library, New Jersey Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and the YMCA Environmental Education Center in Stillwater. The other 2 are trips for the 7th grade band at RIS and the High School Youth and Government Club. Next meeting is March 11th, 2024. Hopefully we'll just do one department. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Kristen.
I just have 2 clarification questions. So for the AP Comp Sci, our enrollment is down due to lack of resources, not lack of interest.
Correct, yeah. It's the enrollment went down because the third, and feel free to correct, but based on the report from the committee, we had 3 courses, but that, in order to have those 3 courses, it involved moving a math teacher to teach that course. We needed the math teachers for math, so we had to move that back, which meant 1 less AP course to work with.
So we actually turned kids away for Comp Sci, possibly.
That part, I'm sure there were probably some interest, but there wasn't, within the meeting, that didn't come out, whether or not there was
Do you
actually
know
turn
what
away or whether it just
I
worked.
actually know because my daughter
Well,
wants
there
to
you go.
take that class
Awesome.
next
I
year.
apologize, by the way. The Roosevelt school nurse called, and that's why I missed that little piece of the curriculum meeting. So that's why I'm asking these questions. Go ahead.
So my daughter wants to take that next year as a senior. And what I was told at her junior conference is there's only going to be 1 section of AP Comp Sci. And if they're taking something else, like my daughter takes chamber orchestra and will be in portfolio, which is the last year of the art track, those are also only 1 period a day.
Got
So it might not fit in. So I could see that being an issue with other kids that want to take certain APs or certain other classes that they're interested in.
Okay, that makes sense. And then my other clarification for the continuity of teaching and the new Roosevelt classroom, that's because there's going to be glass, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that one was easy.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Thank you.
the dividers are going to be glass between the woodworking area and the computing area, so that a teacher can be in both spaces and see what's going on in both spots.
Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
Can I just ask one follow-up to that about the comp sci? Because I know in some districts, there's a possibility for self-guided study, like at home for AP courses in particular, where there's a topic that's just so small, say, that, there's no class to be able to be had. Would comp sci be something that, could be self-directed at home with like the oversight of a teacher just kind of monitoring the work? Or does it really have to be in a kind of a class-focused setting?
I think, so that has come up with not just comp sci, but with other courses. Like, there is that possibility for self-guided curriculum. I think, I certainly don't have the level of expertise to say how that would fit in. I think a self-guided course, just knowing what the standards are that apply to these, would probably have to be vetted for that. And is probably something that, certainly something that we will bring back to the next committee meeting and say should be thought about as far as whether it can happen and how that might work. So I think that and a few other courses could lend itself to that, yeah.
Rob, just building off of that, in the past, and I believe currently with our Latin program, we have multiple levels in the same classroom at the same time. So students that are at that honors level that wouldn't have the opportunity might do additional readings or additional work in a course alongside regular Latin 4 students. And there's obviously opportunities if there's a similar course where something like that could work in the future, but it would obviously be course by course dependent and teacher by teacher dependent.
It's all Latin.
Yeah.
It's Latin 4 and Latin AP that are together, but according to
That's what
Enrique, it's a
I
really
remember them
unique-
saying that, Latin 4 and Latin AP.
Really
Okay.
unique situation, and it takes a very unique teacher, too.
Yes.
Been doing it for about 8 years.
Right.
Quite successfully.
So I would say that one of the things I've learned from being on the committee is that while we may have some shortage of space and other things, we are not short on creative folks in the district. So I think that's definitely a way for us to bring it to the committee, and because I don't think some of our Matt doesn't have anywhere near enough challenges. So I thought let's just put that out there for him and see what he can come up with. So definitely, thanks for the feedback. I do appreciate that. It'll add a lot to the committee.
CJ, I just added it to our curriculum list, too, so we'll revisit it.
She's got the list.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'll turn it over for Finance and Facilities.
Yep. All right.
Brendan?
Thank you, Sonal. The Finance and Facilities Committee met on February 9th. Had a nice 3-hour conversation about the budget, which I'll skip because we've already covered it, the demographic study, which we've already heard a presentation on, and a thought exchange. But moving on to things that I will discuss. Architect Mike Beery from FKA Architects attended the Finance and Facilities meeting to go over a draft facilities condition assessment and analysis report to discuss timelines for a referendum. Both the projected timeline and the draft report are located in the Finance and Facilities folder for all board members to review. We are tentatively targeting an April 2025 referendum date, which would coincide with the budget vote at the same time. We discussed the pros and cons of linking the two together, and really the cost to the district for each election that we hold is over $100,000, and we didn't feel that was worthy of public expenditure. So we can do the two votes together for the same cost. Working back from that April 2025 date, the state has a strict timeline where we have to submit 6 months before that referendum date so that they can give all their final approvals to a project, which puts us at October, mid-October of 2024. The architect needs a couple months to get that final package together for state submission. So we are looking to possibly, or hopefully to have our plans together by the end of August so that the architects can prepare and we can submit to the state in October. For the architects to do that, we have to have our priorities together by the end of March. They need about 6 months to put blueprints together for board approval. So that is roughly where we're at now. This facilities report and this months of legwork that the business office as well as our architects have been doing is hugely instrumental in allowing that timeline to happen. More will follow there, but it's going to be a substantial project, or really many projects put together into a single referendum package. We know that not everything that we need to do will be possible or feasible in one referendum. We just don't have the bonding capacity to build all new schools. Not that we're looking to, but if you make a laundry list of everything that needs to happen, we just won't get there with one budget or with one referendum vote. Even if we had the money, it's not feasible to do that all in 5 or even probably 10 years. So we'll prioritize and move forward from there. And this is really just the beginning of the discussion, and over the next month, in a combination with budget discussions, we'll be having a lot of these conversations as a board as to what we need from a facilities needs, a maintenance perspective, and what we need to expand our curricular offerings, including special ed. Moving on to the Roosevelt facade, we had a couple of the decorative panels that were broken in transit or on site. The replacements have been made, and we expect those to be installed by the end of March. This is really weather dependent work. It's masonry work. It can't happen when it's snowing. We had a pretty good winter up until the last couple weeks. So that should be done by the end of March, beginning of April, and phase 2 will begin as soon as the weather breaks for the spring. Our roofs, we've been talking about them for a while now. We are going to be replacing the roofs over part of Edison and the whole second floor section of Tamaulipas. That means solar panels have to come off. Carmelina, have we received quotes on that yet or no? Okay. As of the 9th, we hadn't yet received those quotes. But all the solar has to come off those sections. We'll replace the roof. That's warranty work. If you see on the agenda tonight, we're also approving $5,000 out of the maintenance reserve to investigate and assess the remainder of our roofs, particularly around solar. We seem to be having a lot of small roof leaks. And on the rest of the agenda tonight, we're approving the subscription busing fee. It's going to remain the same $1,100 that it's been for the last couple of years. We are approving submission of a project to the DOE for air conditioning projects in the MDF, IDF rooms. Those are tech closets in all 10 schools. The cost for those will more than offset the tech, or the reduction in lifespan from the tech projects. Our computers need to be cooled. We all know that. And those rooms are currently, there might be box fans, there might be nothing. They're quite warm. So that includes updating our long-range facility plan with the state. Same thing with some small renovations at Roosevelt, turning what were classrooms that were turned into storage rooms back into classrooms or small group instruction rooms. And yeah, then just lastly, want to thank the following groups for donations. The McKinley PTO for $750 to cover the cost for substitute nurses for the 3rd grade field trip to the Liberty Science Center, the 4th grade field trip to Edison's MLK exhibit, the 5th grade field trip to the Bueller Challenge and Science Center. $100 from Kenneth McRitchie to fund the annual Walton Burris Music Award and the Ian McRitchie Information Technology Award, which are awarded to WHS seniors at awards night. $480 from the Westfield Coalition of the Arts to support classroom supports for 3 orchestra teachers, Craig Stanton, Margaret Faddis, and Amanda Grant. $161.23 from the Washington PTO for supplies for the physical education classes, and $4,790 from the Franklin PTO for the installation and upgrade of an AV system. Thank you, everybody, for your donations. We always appreciate it. And that's it.
Thank you, Brendan. Yep. Any questions for Brendan? Ken? Okay. Next is the Policies, Personnel, and Governance Committee report. Mary?
Yes, I miss Leila because she's a better speaker than I am. Okay. The Policy, Personnel, and Governance, we met on February 1st. And first, we were able to meet with Dr. Greer again, the Director of Human Resources. And he went over non-tenured employees with us and also went through the evaluation process. First of all, being a teacher myself, it's number one in Westfield. We draw very highly qualified teachers, and the evaluation process that Dr. Greer went over with me is very substantial. So they are vetted very appropriately. So I appreciate, we all appreciated you coming in and going over that with us. There's no action on that yet. That'll be later on. Governance, we went over the board resolution. We discussed including board resolutions to acknowledge the board's support of DEI and using the wording of the resolution to clearly define what DEI is and is not. And we left it as administration was going to draft a sample resolution so that we can continue that discussion in future meetings. We also went over school calendars, 2024, 2025. There were a couple of errors in the school calendar that we had to fix. One was parent-teacher conferences. We wanted to change, there was a change in the dates. They were originally scheduled for November 25th and 26th, and we're moving them to November 18th and 19th so that it avoids having the conferences during Thanksgiving week. Also, the June early dismissal in 2024, 2025 was on the wrong date, so we had that fixed from June 19th to 20th to June 23, 24. And then also we're continuing our discussion for the 2025, 2026, and 2026, 2027 school years that we're still going to be continuing to review and also share with principals, supervisors, and the Education Association before we bring that up to you guys. And finally, we had a couple policies. One on the agenda tonight is a second reading of sexual harassment of students. And two, we revisited the tabled policy 5520. We had 3/4 of the committee recommend returning the policy from the table to the agenda for the second reading with no changes tonight. Any questions or discussions?
Yeah, Mary, I just wanted to just make sure the changes for the 24-25 calendar are just technical changes. We're not changing anything other than an error that was on the last day of indicating what were the half
Right,
days.
they're
correct?
typographical errors.
Yes, and we're not voting on any of the calendars
No.
tonight.
No votes.
Anybody else? Okay. Okay, then at this time, I'd like to recognize the public on agenda action items only. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Ed on agenda action items only. As a courtesy, we'd like to allow current students and staff of Westfield Public Schools to speak first. And the board requests that individuals sign in and state their name and municipality of residence and group affiliation, if applicable, for the record, the specific action items they are commenting on, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statements will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. So as we've done in the past, or just last board meeting, which we started, is a Chromebook is set up on the table on the side at the podium with a Google form preloaded. It's self-explanatory. Marianne can help if need be, as she's currently doing. So you'll be prompted to choose first or second public comment and what agenda action item you are speaking on. Okay, then at this time, I'd like to close public comment. I'd ask that the board approve the minutes from January 23rd, 2024 regular board meeting. Can I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ken. All in favor, say aye. Okay, moving on to board action agenda items. Governance, Rob?
Sure, I'd like to move item A under the governance section of tonight's agenda. Do I have a second? Second. Second is Brendan. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion?
Okay, Carmelina, can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Charles Jelinas.
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes?
Kristen Sonic Schmelz,
Yes.
and Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Okay, next is personnel items. Mary?
Yes, I'd like to move items A through M under the personnel section of tonight's agenda. Is there a second? Thank you, Sonal. Any questions?
Is this where you speak? Yeah.
Oh, you have, go ahead. Sorry.
This evening, I'd like to share some comments regarding 3 of our employees who are retiring this by way of this agenda. Mercedes Points began her career in Westfield Public Schools in September 2006 as a teacher of Spanish at Edison Intermediate School. Mercedes exemplified compassion in education, fostering positive relationships with students and colleagues through the teaching and learning of the Spanish language. She continually sought ways to enhance her teaching methods and share that knowledge with her colleagues and students, notably through a Discovering Language Through Culture course. Beyond her primary role, Mercedes contributed to the community by working with English learners in our summer program and was instrumental in supporting cultural initiatives like the Day of the Dead hallway exposition annually at Edison Intermediate School. Philomena De Cristofaro has been a dedicated and valued member of the Franklin School community for 18 years. Each evening, she ensures that the classrooms are clean, safe, and ready for students to return to school the next day. She has always been friendly and ready to help, especially with the many evening events at Franklin. Whether it's a chorus concert or a math night, she ensures that everything is just right for the event and is on hand to help with any last-minute needs. Her positive presence at Franklin will truly be missed, but we are happy that she will now have more time to spend with her family. Carmine Coppola began his career in Westfield in August 1997 and has spent the last 16 years at Lincoln School. Known for his exceptional organization and efficiency, Carmine has diligently maintained the cleanliness of the building to the highest standards. His commitment to excellence is evident in his reliable follow-through on feedback, and Carmen's responsiveness to staff members' concerns, always coupled with a pleasant demeanor, has been a signature aspect of his career. Additionally, his warmth and approachability have significantly enhanced his interactions with students, leaving an indelible positive mark on our school community. We wish all three of these individuals a happy and healthy retirement.
Okay, Carmelina, can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
I'm a yes to all items, but abstaining from item G.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Jelinas,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wiggins.
Yes.
Okay, Finance and Facilities. Kent or Brendan?
I'd like to move items A through Q under the finance section of tonight's agenda. May I have a second, please? Thank you, Kristen. Any comments, questions, thoughts? No?
Do you want to just highlight the total donations?
Yes.
top.
No. Brendan walked through the donations before, but to your point, total 2023-24 donations to date, $53,720.59. Well done, and thank you all. Wait till next month when we do the tote board again.
Carmelina, can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Jelinas,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wiggins.
Yes.
Okay, next is policies. Mary?
Yes, before we do that, I would like to make a motion to move to add policy 5520, disorder and demonstration, to the agenda under policy item A, to be approved for a second reading. Can I have a second?
Second.
Kristen, thank you, Kristen. Any discussion?
So we need a vote,
We need a
right?
vote on
Yes,
this.
okay.
Yes. Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Jelinas,
No.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wiggins.
Yes. Okay, so now, I'd like to move item A, which now includes both, from tonight's policies agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Kent, thank you.
Another vote.
Another vote.
Another vote.
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yep.
Charles Jelinas,
Yes to 5751, no to 5520.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wiggins.
Yes.
Okay. Next is curriculum. Rob?
Sure, I'd like to move items A through C on the curriculum instruction assessment agenda. Do I have a second? Mary? Any discussion?
Okay.
Can we-
Sahar Aziz, Robin Nacho,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Charles Jelinas,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes. Okay, at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the notes for the record. Any unfinished business? New business? Liaison reports?
Sure, I have just two reports. So on, I attended, first is the Rec Commission. I attended the Rec Commission's most recent meeting, February 5th. A couple of announcements from that. The Tour to Westfield bike race will be on September 8th, if you are so inclined to join. Check the Recreation Department's website for other events and other programming that the department is putting together. Also, there was an extremely strong response to pool renewals. Most of the renewals were sent out by email. The Rec Department got some notice that some of them made it into spam folders, some didn't make it there. So I just want to, if you were looking to renew your pool membership, just make sure you check the folders because there's, like I said, there's a pretty strong response coming in. Make sure you get those in. You should also look for some multiple improvements to different parks in the area as well. The Rec Commission has a group together working on a number of different improvements there. So certainly check their website for what's coming up. The second liaison report comes from the high school PTSO. One of the things that, one of the highlights of that meeting was a presentation from our counseling department, and that actually ties in well with where our budget was in the additional staff and programming that's come out of that. So the counseling department has increased significantly its programming for parents and students. There was a course selection virtual online program done that had 300 students attend it for the high school, just how the course selection process works, et cetera. Clearly a need based on that number of students who were attending. That was followed right after by the 8th grade Parents Night to talk about course selection for parents who may be experiencing that for the first time with students moving up. The counselors are currently doing one-to-ones with juniors to get them ready for the college process, and that's going to be followed immediately with one-to-one meetings with 8th grade students to get their course recommendations prepared. So a very, very busy group of people. The counseling department also received a mental health grant from Rutgers. There are folks from Rutgers going through and doing on-site visits with our counseling department now to help improve services, make areas of recommendations there. You should definitely keep an eye out for future parent presentations by the student assistance counselors. There's one coming from the police department, but another SAC presentation, I think it's April 11th, I want to say, to address potential student drug use and the rest. Finally, there is the counseling department established a Blue Devil Community Network. This is a network, it's a simple Google form open to Westfield residents to provide an opportunity for students to engage with Westfield residents almost in an internship and a career communication perspective. So if you are someone who is involved in the practice of law, you sign up for the Blue Devil Community Network, and the counseling department may match you with students if you're interested in speaking with them who may be interested in those careers, or if you own a business in town or whatever you may think. So to get to that, you can actually just type in Blue Devil Community Network Westfield on any search engine. I did the form. It takes all of about 5 minutes to sign up. You can also access that through the counseling page on the Westfield School website. Strongly encourage everyone in town to sign up and have a chance to do some basic mentoring and provide an opportunity for our students to talk to folks in professional fields. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob. CJ and I virtually attended the Union County School Boards Association county meeting on February 7th, which was presented by local BAs within the county. They provided or presented included legislative updates and a panel discussion on budget development for board members, which was very timely for us to attend, and they provided a very thorough and informative overview of the process. I don't know, CJ, if you have anything you want to add?
No, yeah, it was a very informative meeting, and there's a large amount of legislative items that they had discussed. So we got a very full update on all the laws that the governor has passed as of late, and what smaller number that he's vetoed. And we did have a very thorough, I thought, presentation. It was an excellent presentation on budgets. And interestingly enough, it prompted, I think, a further set of thoughts amongst some of the attendees, which was the title was, budgets in inflationary times. It was more of a kind of a by the books budget analysis, calendaring it, but it does bring to mind the idea that we should think about, how budgeting works when there is high inflation, when there are other economic issues. I think it's a worthwhile thing to kind of put our heads together about and discuss further. That's it.
Okay, thank you, CJ. At this time, I'd like to recognize were there any other liaison reports? Okay, I'd like to recognize the public for comments. During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. As a courtesy, we'd like to allow current student staff of Westfield Public Schools to speak first. The board requests that individuals sign in and state their name, municipality of residence, and group affiliation if applicable for the record, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration.
Okay, first thing I wanted to say is just it's a hope for next time.
Please state your name.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought I just had to write it down.
Yeah.
I'm JJ, I live in Westfield. Hey, everybody. I feel like you guys are getting used to this at this point. I was interested in what you guys were saying before. I didn't understand when we were determining what goes in the green and the red. And if you guys can address that at the next meeting, I would appreciate that. I didn't know if it was after we got the state aid or before. And I didn't know if there was a way essentially of gerrymandering teachers we really want to keep that and get the budget that we want to have. And if that's kind of the plan and that's how it works, I just didn't understand the machinations. So I wanted to ask for next time. Then separately, I have to do this again. So, one of my favorite sayings of all time is that actions speak louder than words. And unfortunately in our district, the actions of students and the actions or inactions of the board and the superintendent really are pretty loud. Acts of hate in our schools seem to happen often, or more often than I hear about everywhere else in general. The most recent one was a swastika, but as I've been looking into it more and more, I'm realizing that there's more acts of hate and just acts against marginalized communities in Westfield that aren't really addressed or brought up to the public and informed in the public in general. Not just something that happened, but everything that happens. In December, the newsletter was circulated acknowledging that despite the thoughtful and strategic increase in education and procedural measures, it's still not been enough time to fully eliminate this ugly expression of hate. So I guess my question is, have you started the process to find a different course of action? What are you doing differently now to ensure that these acts aren't happening the next time? I heard about the school bathroom time sign-in sheet, but, hate to say it, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So if we're going to keep doing the same thing, I don't know what to expect, or I guess I do. Also, you asked the district to do 3 things over the break: unite, reflect, and challenge. But I want to make sure that you guys are holding yourselves to the same standard. We should hold open and honest conversations with children. Have you guys addressed and spoken to the actual children that are impacted? You as a board, I don't know if it's something of like HIPAA or how that works, but that's where I'm going. I realize that I'm getting too late in the thing. So I wanted to know if anybody's talked to people that were directly impacted by what happened in schools. Did you hear their side? This has to do for what I heard from the Wall Street Journal or from the swastika stuff. And if you have, please communicate it. We really want to know. Everywhere I go in New York City, I see something, say something, but in Westfield, I hear nothing. And I listen to a Wall Street Journal podcast to hear about what's going on in my own school. If a 7th grader's hearing it, my 4th grader's hearing it, or my 2nd grader's hearing it, like everybody's hearing it. Please tell us about everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, at this time. If anyone else is planning to speak, feel free to come up and sign up ahead of time.
Hi, good evening. Kathy O'Gara, Westfield. Quick question about an agenda item that came up. It was, I didn't see it on, it was an actionable agenda item, but I didn't see it on the agenda. It was a policy that had a second reading, and it was voted on. It was 5521, I believe. Public demonstration, am I correct? I didn't see it on the agenda. But it sounds like it was put forth for a second reading. Am I confused, or that cannot be answered? There was something that was read, a second reading of public demonstration, but I don't see it on the agenda. And I do look over the agenda before I come to the meetings. They're very difficult to understand, though, I have to admit. And it is hard to tell what's actionable, what's not actionable. I would love if going forward that could be clearer, because I really sometimes don't know when I can speak. But I would have spoken about that public demonstration item had I known it was an actionable item tonight. So that's it. Thank you. Oh, and I would love to possibly share prepared statements, but since it was kind of quiet this evening, I decided not to. Thank you.
My time has already started. Scott Kessler. No? I'll walk up faster next time. Sorry. Hi, Scott Kessler from Westfield. On December 19th of last year, the New Jersey School Ethics Commission rendered a decision. And in that decision, it found that certain statements made by a member of this board were controversial and likely perceived as offensive and hurtful to members of the district's Jewish community, being Westfield, and as well to the Jewish community as a whole. It's been 2 months, and the board has said nothing in response to that decision. Now, in the last 2 months, there's also been a Senate Judiciary Committee investigation. There's also been a federal civil rights discrimination investigation at Rutgers concerning the harassment of students because of Jewish ancestry or Israeli citizenship. The Senate Judiciary Committee is investigating the financial support underpinning the Rutgers University Center for Security, Race, and Rights, these are their words, the Senate's words, which sponsors events featuring anti-Semitic speakers, individuals who justify violence against the State of Israel, terrorist sympathizers, and advocates of domestic radicalism. Again, the board has been silent about these events which impact our community, which impact our district, which impact the students in this district. There's been silence. I want to remind everyone of the words of Albert Einstein. If I were to remain silent, I'd be guilty of complicity. I really hope that the board meets its obligations to this community and says something about what's going on. Because if not, we believe, and we will continue to believe, that those offensive and hurtful comments were directed to us, and they have not been corrected or rectified by you. So please, please speak up. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to close public session. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a second? Thank you, Brendan. All in favor, say aye.